Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for the organizers for giving me this opportunity. So I will talk a bit more application-oriented research. So we are looking into how to use quantum chemistry methods and machine learning tools to design molecules for for organic devices or nanodevices. And so the applications that I will talk about today are all centered around plasmonic nanostructures. So I just give you a very short introduction of what these are. And so these are nanostructures made of noble metals that have a very strong interaction with electromagnetic fields. And this results in a very large enhancement of their absorption and scattering properties. And this can be used in many different kind of applications. So one is plasmonic photocatalysis, then there is photothermal cancer therapy. Also, if you can put molecules on the surface of these nanoparticles, the molecular spectroscopic signals get also extremely enhanced. So you can use it in bioimaging techniques, and I will briefly talk about that later on. And a very high resolution spectroscopy that is able to go down to the single molecule level or even map single vibrations of molecules. And so the main focus of this talk will be new nanodevices and especially a terahertz detector, which is itself is also very useful for biomedical applications because terahertz radiation is non-destructive, but it goes through like clothing or packaging, so it can be used in security scanning or quality control. And but right now there is a lack of terahertz detectors that are cheap or small or operate at room temperatures. So if you look at the spectrum there, terahertz radiation lies between microwave and infrared radiation, and this is the region where molecular vibrations have their transitions. So this new idea is to use plasmonic nanocavities to enhance the absorption of terahertz radiation by molecular vibrations, and then use another laser that through scattering process would convert to this information to the visible range, where we have detectors that are already very efficient and easy to use. And so the key point of this is that we have to have nano antennas that would enhance all of these terahertz and visible radiations, and this would result in a nanoscale and room temperature device. So now the question is, what kind of molecules can be put inside these detectors? And so we started to find out what are the properties that are required and how can we use computational chemistry to help developing new molecules for this. So first of all, the most important thing is that the molecular vibrations need to be active in these IR absorption and Raman scattering processes. And they should have frequency in this terahertz regime. But also, apart from these, there are some other aspects from a more practical point of view. They need to be easily accessible or synthesizable, and need to have self-assembling properties. So these are gold nanoparticles that I will talk about, and we were looking into thiol molecules that assemble usually very well on the gold surfaces. And there are some other requirements for how dense they should pack, and the size of these so-called plasmonic gaps is also limited. So this is the workflow that we use. We use quantum chemistry calculations to accurately calculate the intensity of these molecular vibrational transitions, then validate it against experiments. Then we train a machine learning model to directly predict this intensity and go through commercial databases that contain millions of molecules and screen out the best ones. And now we are also trying to do some generative machine learning so that we can go beyond that and design new molecules for this application. So just a bit more going into the theory. Basically, this process is an increase in the anti-Stokes intensity of a specific vibrational mode. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but it depends on these IR absorption and Raman scattering cross-sections, which can be easily calculated from quantum chemistry calculations. But these are very costly calculations, so even if you use DFT, like a fairly small basis set, it takes like a couple of hours to optimize structures of molecules and calculate frequencies and intensities. So we want to have something faster, and we're also interested in not just single vibrational modes of molecules, but like a property that describes how well a molecule would perform. So we actually, in a frequency window, we sum up the contributions from different vibrational modes, and this gives us this molecule level property that we call P, which can later on be used for the machine learning. So we start by taking two databases. So these are commercially available molecules and contain millions of compounds. And first we have to filter it for thiols so that they have an affinity to gold surface. And then we select randomly a set of molecules and perform quantum chemistry calculations on this. And this takes a couple of hours for each molecule, as I mentioned. And then we can use trained machine learning to do that and predict for the unseen molecules. And so we actually do this in kind of an iterative way. So we select molecules that are predicted to be very intensive and do a quantum chemistry calculation on top of those as well, and do this until we get all the best hits from our databases. So here I just show you some results of the machine learning models. And so actually this is what is shown here is a linear model, which also lets us interpret the results. So these machine learning models like correlate the presence of specific fragments of the molecules to the intensity. And here you can see that some kind of functional groups like the amino group correlate very well with the intensity of the molecule in this kind of terahertz detection. And to show you the results here, so the yellow one is the randomly selected set of molecules from these commercial databases, but I actually put in blue also some molecules that are very frequently used in experiments. So these are very simple molecules like aliphatic or simple aromatic thiols that are easy to work with in the lab, but they actually don't have very high intensity, as you can see here. And now if we put in all the molecules that we calculated through this screening procedure, now we have molecules that have very high intensity. So actually the best ones have 150 times better conversion intensity, which is used for this terahertz detection, than the average molecule. And if you look carefully, you can also see that between molecules B and E, the only difference is this amino group. That was also seen in the machine learning model that this correlates well with intensity. And we also just verified that this is actually an active group that has intensive vibrational transitions in the terahertz range. So while we were working on the computational aspects, we had experimental partners actually here in Cambridge and also in Lausanne who worked in actually realizing the detectors. And so this is not yet in the terahertz range, it's in the mid-IR range. But they, with different constructs, they managed to create these plasmonic devices. And they looked at the same molecule, this biphenylthiol molecule that has one vibration that is very active in this process. So you can see that it's around 1,100 inverse centimeters. And if you look at the experimentally measured spectrum, so what they do is they use a laser at this frequency, at this vibrational mode frequency, and when the laser is turned on, they see a large increase in the anti-Stokes-Raman signal, which is basically the effect that we want to see for this detector. And so this was a very nice application for terahertz detection, but now we have quantum chemistry results for thousands of molecules, so we just wanted to share the results in an easily accessible way so that you can just basically look at all the molecules, all of the vibrational modes, set different parameters, and really check all of the molecules so that you can use it for other applications as well. And as a couple of examples, I show here So this would be very useful if you want to maximize intensity at a specific frequency, for example. So one application that we thought about was this vibrational strong coupling effect. So lately it's become very popular and actually realized in experiments. So in this case, a vibrational transition is resonant with the plasmonic resonance. And this can result in new chemical reactions and so on. And here the aim is to maximize the absorption intensity at a specific frequency. And you can see the molecule used in the experiment. That's the gray one. And so I just want to stress that we don't have to do any more calculation at this point. We just look at the database that is already there online. And you can find molecules that have 4 times higher intensity. Then another application would be to use the fact that these Raman and IR spectra are very unique to the molecules. So there are possible applications where you use a number of different molecules in these nanotags, so-called nanotags. And this is very useful for bioimaging, and you can follow how these go around in the living system. And these are also useful for anti-counterfeiting labels. So in this case, you want to have a lot of molecules that have very diverse spectra. So far what I talked about was high throughput screening, which works on existing databases, which is very nice if you have access to good databases. But what we saw actually was that from the millions of compounds that are available, only a very small portion are actually thiol molecules. So for this application, we thought it might be worth to try generative models instead. So this would create new molecules, and now we just have to be very careful so that the new molecules are actually valid and functional molecules and somehow easily synthesizable. So specific for this terahertz detection goal, our aim is to generate new compounds that have thiol groups. And we also want to not just generate a random set of molecules, but to drive this generation towards molecules that have high intensity. So we only generate molecules that could be used in this terahertz device. And then we also want to consider other properties like the packing and synthesizability parameters that I mentioned before. And the way we started to do that was to look at autoregressive models. So these build molecules atom by atom, and they basically learn to predict the probability of the next atom type and then the distances from all the previously placed atoms until a full molecule is built. And here you can see that depending on what training database you give them, they reproduce the distribution in that database. And then at Warwick, before I joined the group, Julia and Reinhard came up with this technique so that we can drive the generation of molecules towards tailored molecules. And in this case, so this is an iterative biasing technique where you first have a training database and use generative models to generate new molecules, and then there is a filtering process. And the important thing is that this is connected to another neural network that predicts the property. So then you only select molecules that fulfill a specific criterion for the property. So like have intensity higher than threshold, for example. And then the generative model is retrained on this set of molecules, and you can do this in loops until you reach the desired property values. So this was the example that they tried this on. So they developed the machine learning model that was able to predict orbital energies for molecules. And especially in organic electronics applications, the interest is to have a low HOMO-LUMO gap. So they took this OE62 database, the black one there, and then via this iterative biasing, they went further down and down to the small energy gap region. And you can see that in chemical space, this corresponds to kind of zooming into some part of chemical space and getting more specialized molecules in kind of a targeted exploration scheme. And you are also able to do a multi-property optimization with these techniques. So here, we wanted to have a small energy gap, but also at the same time easily synthesizable molecules. And I put in this red line to show that on the previous slide, that was the energy gap that we reached. But here there is kind of a trade-off between the two properties, so you cannot reach as small energy gaps if you want to have also high synthesizability. And so now we are trying to do a similar thing for the terahertz detection problem, and especially to connect this terahertz intensity predictor that I showed before to the generative model, and to enforce a tile functional group is generated in these models. And we also want to, because there is also this conditional generative machine learning model came out recently that is also able to produce tailored molecules. And we just want to benchmark and see how the bias and the conditional models perform, and how we can consider different trade-offs between the properties that we want to get. So these are some preliminary results that we have. So this is the biasing. And we took a training set of 30,000 tile molecules optimized with XTB. And you can see that within a couple of iterations of this biasing, you can actually increase the number of molecules that have high p-values. And this was at the same time also biased towards a small synthetic complexity score. So we are now analyzing the results and trying to see what we can learn from these methods. And so here I just showed how the elemental composition changes with the number of iterations, and some examples for good performing molecules from this database. You can see that they have actually a lot of amino groups that we already saw earlier. So now we are trying to understand how we can further improve the results. So just to sum up, I showed you a computational approach for a novel terahertz detection technique and an experimental demonstration from this project, from this effect. And by screening commercial databases, we were able to achieve a 150-fold intensity increase and develop this online tool that you can use for other surface-enhanced spectroscopic applications. And now we are looking into generative machine learning to design new molecules for these applications. So this was work done at King's College and UCL with Edina Rosta, and the experiments were done here in Cambridge by Jeremy Baumberg's group, and also the online tool was developed with people from Lausanne, and now in Warwick we are working on this generative design project. So I would just like to thank everyone who worked on this, and thank you for your attention.